No one knew exactly when Maya began to feel part of that house. Perhaps it was the afternoon Ethan stopped trembling in her arms after a nightmare. Or maybe it was when Eli, almost in a whisper, asked her if she too would leave like all the others. The truth is that when she took that job, Maya was only looking for a roof over her head, a steady salary, and some stability. She hadn't expected to find two broken children struggling to breathe amidst so much silence. Nor an absent father, surrounded by wealth and guilt, who could barely hold his own children's gaze. From the first day, Maya felt like she was walking on foreign soil. Not only because she was the 15th nanny in less than a year, but because of the tense glances she received. The cook looked at her out of the corner of her eye. The housekeeper barely shook her hand, and Edward Hawthorne, the owner of the house, greeted her with a distant gesture, as if he had already expected her to resign. The twins were handed, to her like someone passing a fragile, cracked object. They don't talk much. Sometimes they scream at night. You'll sleep in the next room, she was told. Maya didn't ask any questions. She already knew the kind of pain that disguises itself as silence. The first few nights were a trial by fire. The children took turns having nightmares. One would wake up soundlessly crying, and the other would jolt to his feet. Maya would sit between their beds, hold their hands, tell them made-up stories, or sing to them very softly, in the voice that had soothed her as a child. She slept sitting up, with her back against the wall. A week later, for the first time, she woke up in the children's bed, exhausted after a particularly rough night. She didn't realize how long it was until sunlight streamed through the window and Edward appeared in the doorway. The way he looked at her chilled her blood. Edward wouldn't listen to reason. He raised his voice in fury, accusing her of having crossed all boundaries, of not respecting the trust he'd placed in her. Maya tried to explain, but he already had the phone in his hand, demanding that she be removed from the house before nightfall. She left without another word, her head held high, but her heart broken. What hurt most wasn't the screaming or the injustice. It was the twins wailing at the door when they saw her leave. That was the first time they openly showed that they didn't want to be without her. Edward spent the next few days, enveloped in a silence thicker than usual. The house, already quiet, became almost ghostly. Ethan and Eli stopped eating normally. They refused food, avoided eye contact, and at night, they screamed again in their nightmares. Edward listened from his office and sat motionless, hands clenched on the desk, unsure how to approach. The replacement nanny quit after the second day. On the third, she wasn't even allowed in. The children retreated into silence, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was losing everything again. Guilt hit him with unexpected force, not only for having misjudged Maya, but because he realized belatedly that she had achieved something he, with all his money, couldn't. Connecting with the twins, restoring a shred of security to them. One night, as he held Ethan in his arms after a meltdown, the boy murmured, his voice cracking, "Is Maya coming back?" It was like someone had stuck a needle in his chest. The next morning, without consulting anyone, Edward took the car and went looking for her. He didn't know if she would see him, but he needed to try. Maya didn't greet him with a smile. She opened the door with a serious face, her arms crossed, and a mixture of surprise and pain in her eyes. Edward, not one to apologize easily, stammered more than he spoke. He asked her to come back. He told her he'd made an unforgivable mistake, that the children needed her, that he needed her too. Maya listened silently, without looking away. And then, he spoke in a firm voice. She would agree to come back, but only under clear conditions. Respect, limits, active participation from him as a father. No invisibility, no absences justified by work or mourning. The children deserved more. The agreement was unspoken, but real. When Maya returned home, Ethan ran to hug her without a word. Eli squeezed her hand as if afraid she might disappear again. From that day on, the dynamic changed. Edward started eating breakfast with them. He would sit on the rug to play, even though he felt clumsy at first. Maya didn't correct him. She just looked at him, and from time to time said, "They don't need you to be perfect, just to be there." For the first time in years, the house began to fill with soft laughter. It wasn't cackling yet, but it wasn't shouting anymore. Everything seemed to be gradually stabilizing until the letter arrived. A thick envelope, stamped officially, from the parents of Edward's deceased wife, the Hollingsworths. In it, they announced their intention to file for custody of the twins. They cited emotional instability of the father and inappropriate environment influenced by unqualified staff. Edward froze when he read it. Maya, who was in the kitchen cutting fruit with the children, noticed the trembling in his hands before he did. That night, fear returned, this time in the adults. The following days were a mix of lawyers, documentation, interviews, and tension. The Hollingsworths were influential, traditional, and deeply suspicious of anything that deviated from their family mold. Seeing Maya in the house irritated them. "She's not family, she's not even a professional," Mrs. Hollingsworth had said with freezing coldness. Despite the emotional progress the children had made, the environment was beginning to crumble again, this time from the outside. Edward, although more involved, felt powerless. Maya, however, didn't back down a step. The hearing was set for a Monday morning. Maya was under no obligation to attend, but chose to be. The Hollingsworths' attorneys painted a grim portrait of Edward, absent, emotionally unstable, overly dependent on an untrained nanny. When Maya was called to testify, the silence in the courtroom was absolute. She hadn't studied law, but she knew pain, and that's what she conveyed. She spoke of finding the twins when she arrived, of the sleepless nights, of the first hug, of the first laugh. She spoke with her heart in her throat and her eyes, steady. She wasn't trying to convince. She was speaking only the truth. Maya's words moved not only the judge, but also Edward, who looked at her from his seat as if he had just fully seen her. When the hearing ended, the verdict was clear. Custody would remain with Edward. The Hollingsworths left without looking back. On the way out, the judge approached Maya and said something she would never forget. "Thank you for not giving up on them." From that moment on, something changed. Maya was no longer just the nanny. She was part of that family, not by last name, but by bond, by everything she had held on to when no one else knew how. The house breathed fresh air after the hearing. There were no more unexpected visitors or letters containing legal threats. Ethan and Eli resumed their routines more calmly, and Edward, more present than ever, was involved in every detail of daily life. It was he who proposed transforming one of the mansion's empty wings into something more useful. He asked Maya to help him think. At first, she didn't understand why he included her. "Because you know how it hurts," he told her one afternoon. Thus, the idea of the Hawthorne Williams Center for Healing was born. They began with informal meetings in the library, with plans spread out on the table and long conversations in the kitchen. Maya proposed that the center take in children and adolescents who, like Ethan and Eli, had experienced profound trauma. Edward handled the permits, the legal structure, and the funding. Maya led the human resources, interviews, staff selection, and planning therapeutic activities. Soon, the idea became a real space, with art rooms, reading corners, mental health professionals, and above all, warmth. One of the first young women to arrive was Belle, a 14-year-old with a defiant look and a hunched back, as if she were always expecting a blow. She had been through several foster homes and came with a history of rebellion and silence. On the first day, she broke a lamp. On the second, she locked herself in the bathroom for 3 hours. Maya wasn't scared. She saw her, heard her, and above all, didn't pressure her. She offered her a notebook and a box of colored pencils. Belle didn't say anything, but she took the notebook. 2 weeks later, she left the first drawing on the table, a girl hiding under a bed. Their bond grew at its own pace. Maya knew what it was like to trust no one, and Belle sensed it. Sometimes they just sat in silence. Other times, they talked about movies, music, or food. Little by little, Belle began to participate in the center's activities. She even helped the little ones with their homework. Edward watched everything with quiet admiration. It was like watching Maya reconstruct herself through each child she helped. And the twins, who followed her like shadows, saw a big sister in Belle. For the first time, everything seemed to be moving forward smoothly. But the calm doesn't always last. The problem began with an anonymous article published in a local newspaper. They accused the center of operating without sufficient certifications, of exposing minors to people without professional training, and of manipulating stories to attract funding. At first, they thought it would be temporary. But within days, the news spread on social media, and some sponsors began to withdraw their support. Maya felt the blow like a betrayal. She had poured her heart into every corner of that place, and now she was being called a dangerous, inexperienced person from the distance of a keyboard. Belle felt it the most. She retreated into seclusion again, refused to attend group sessions, and one night confessed to Maya that she felt ashamed. "They're going to say I'm making it all up, that I'm using pain as an excuse," she murmured. Maya hugged her without responding. At that moment, she understood that they couldn't remain silent, not for themselves, but for those who were still learning to speak. It was then that they decided to do something they were afraid of, tell their story publicly, without makeup, without scripts. Just the truth, from the place of someone who has experienced firsthand what others only read in reports. They organized a conference at the same center. They invited the press, families, and donors. Edward sat in the front row with the twins at his side. Maya took the stage with Belle, who, seeing her speak, decided to take the microphone as well. With a trembling but firm voice, she recounted how she arrived broken, how she had learned to trust again, how for the first time she had plans for the future. "We are not statistics or case studies. We are people. And this place saved me," she said. The silence in the room was total. No one breathed. No one expected to hear something like this from someone like Belle. The video went viral in less than 24 hours. Criticism gave way to expressions of support, testimonies from other young women who had been through the center, and even letters from professionals who offered to help without pay. The media scandal faded in the face of living evidence of real change. Maya, though exhausted, felt something akin to relief. Not only for the center, but because she had seen Belle defend herself with her own words, without anger, without shame. That girl who had arrived knocking on doors was now opening them for others. And she, Maya, was finding meaning again, even amidst the chaos. In the midst of all this turmoil, Maya received a handwritten letter she hadn't expected. It was from Lorraine, her biological mother. They hadn't spoken for over 10 years. The letter was brief, unadorned, and simply said she wanted to see her, if there was still anything left to save. Maya read it several times before deciding what to do. It wasn't a fresh wound. It was a scar that never fully healed. She remembered all night waiting for her mother to sober up, forgotten birthdays, screams from the other side of the door. But something inside her told her that maybe it was worth closing that chapter, even if it hurt. Edward insisted on accompanying her, but Maya preferred to go alone. She found Lorraine in a small apartment on the west side of the city. She was older, more fragile than she remembered. There were no hugs, only long glances, awkward questions, and thick silences. Lorraine didn't justify what she did, but she didn't apologize as Maya had hoped. She said she was sick at the time, that she did what she could. Maya, for the first time, didn't feel anger. She felt pity, not for the woman in front of her, but for the girl she had been and who never had what she needed. As they left, they didn't promise to see each other again. But Maya left feeling lighter. Weeks later, the unexpected happened. Her father, whom she hadn't even known well, appeared. He found out about the center through social media, recognized her in an interview, and contacted her via direct message. He said he'd changed, that he wanted to make amends for the past, that he'd been through difficult things too. Maya didn't know what to think. For years, she believed he had simply disappeared. Now, after so much, he appeared with a speech of redemption. Unlike the encounter with her mother, this one left her more confused than at peace, but she chose to listen to him, at least once. The encounter was tense, filled with words that couldn't find their place. He spoke as if he could still easily enter her life. He told her he'd been a volunteer at a veterans program for years, after serving time in prison and rehabilitation. He understood now what it meant to be absent, and that he wasn't looking for forgiveness, but rather the opportunity to do something useful. Maya listened without nodding. In the end, all he said was, "I built something without you. I don't know if I want you to be a part of it, but I at least needed to hear you say it." It was the first time he'd drawn a line without guilt. After those reunions, Maya needed some time for herself. She didn't ask for a vacation, but Edward noticed. He offered her a few days away from the center, with his full support. She didn't leave. Instead, she doubled her presence, as if organizing the center's shelves or sitting down to read with the children also allowed her to organize her own thoughts. It was Belle who asked her one afternoon if she was sad. Maya smiled, tired. "A little," she admitted. "But I'm okay. I'm here." That simple, sincere answer reaffirmed something she had forgotten. She didn't need to be whole to support others, just to be honest. The twins also noticed the change. Ethan began to sleep without waking up screaming. Eli no longer asked Maya to stay until he fell asleep. Now they were the ones who sought her out to read stories, draw pictures, or just be around. Edward, for his part, became a constant presence not only out of obligation, but by choice. He joined center meetings, participated in activities with the children, and shared meals in the kitchen, where before there had only been emptiness. He wasn't perfect, but he tried every day, and Maya saw it, appreciated it, even if she didn't say much. One afternoon, while they were arranging boxes of books for a new reading room, Edward told her he wanted to expand the center, that there were other cities where children also hoped for something like this. Maya looked at him skeptically. "And how would we do it?" she asked. Edward already had contacts, ideas, and plans, but he didn't want to do it without her. "This is yours as much as it is mine. It's not a project, it's a way of life," he told her. And for the first time, Maya didn't hesitate. She accepted. Because as afraid as she was of change, she had learned that what she built from love could withstand even the strongest storms. As the months passed, requests for collaboration began to pour in from around the country. Professionals, volunteers, even former students of the center wanted to replicate what was experienced there. The model of human care, centered on listening and presence, began to be recognized in articles, conferences, and universities. Maya never fully grew accustomed to public speaking, but every time she took the stage, she thought of Belle, of the twins, of herself at 8 years old, waiting on someone else's porch. Her story was no longer hers alone. It had become a tool for transforming realities. Belle grew up quickly, not in age, but in her gaze. At 17, she began leading small, welcoming groups for the center's new teens. She told them her story unfiltered, but without victimhood. Sometimes she used harsh metaphors. Other times she simply said, "This happened to me. It doesn't define me, but it left its mark on me." Maya watched her from afar, with a mixture of pride and nostalgia. She knew Belle was ready to soar beyond that place. One day, the girl confessed that she wanted to study social work. "I want to be like you," she told her. Maya smiled, without romanticizing anything. "I know better than me." "Get there sooner," she replied. Meanwhile, Edward and Maya increasingly shared spaces. The barriers that had once been necessary now blurred, but not uncomfortable. They didn't talk about labels or who they were. There was a deep respect, a silent complicity, and a shared routine that spoke louder than any declaration. Sometimes the twins would ask them if they were a real family. Maya always replied, "And what do you feel?" Because she learned that a bond isn't imposed. It's built day by day, with small, consistent actions. And in that house, everyone had chosen to stay. When the first center in another city was inaugurated, Belle was the featured guest. She gave a short but powerful speech. Edward introduced her with emotion evident even in his posture. Maya sat in the front row, holding the hands of Ethan and Eli, who were no longer the scared children who cried at night. They were now curious teenagers, with dreams and plans. The applause at the end of the event was long and sincere, and Maya understood something she hadn't allowed herself to see. Her life had meaning not because of what she had suffered, but because of what she had chosen to do with that suffering. One night, back home, Maya went out into the garden and sat in silence. She looked at the lights in the house, heard the twins laughing from upstairs, felt Edward approaching without saying anything. She didn't need words. She just took a deep breath. Finally, after so much, she didn't feel like she was just passing through. She didn't have to prove anything, or wait for the moment when everything would fall apart. She had found something stronger than abandonment: permanence. And without promising eternity, she knew she wasn't alone. That in that place, between laughter, memories, drawings, and new stories, she had built a home. The center's impact multiplied beyond anything Maya ever imagined. Invitations to international conferences, proposals for partnerships, and scholarships for adolescents who had attended the programs poured in. Some media outlets called her the woman who rewrote the childhood of the forgotten. Maya always responded with the same phrase: "I didn't rewrite anything. I was just there when no one else wanted to be." Because for her, it all began with 2 children in a dark room and a silent promise not to abandon them. Ethan and Eli grew up with a naturalness that contrasted with their early years. They still went to therapy, but now they were the ones helping other children adapt. One afternoon, during a group activity, one of them told a new girl, "This place isn't going to fix you, but it will take care of you while you fix yourself." Maya heard from the hallway, and she had to sit down to keep from breaking down right there, because she understood that the twins were no longer just healing. They were healing others. And that was living proof that everything they did was worth it. Belle, now at university, returned whenever she could. Sometimes just to chat with Maya in the kitchen like before. Sometimes to give talks at the new centers. She was still afraid of not being up to par, but she had learned not to let fear decide for her. Maya would tell her, "You don't need to be invincible. You just need to be you." And that phrase became one of the center's mottos. Because every child who arrived brought with them a broken story, but also the possibility of starting a new one. And that was what Maya never stopped repeating. Here, no one is saved alone, but no one is left behind. Edward, for his part, was never again the cold, inaccessible man he once was. The pain accompanied him, but it no longer controlled him. With Maya by his side, he learned to be present without perfection, to listen without judgment, to love without fear. He never proposed to her, nor did she expect him to. What they built together didn't need contracts. It was stronger than that. It was everyday, real. A family built from choice, not obligation. A family in which each person had arrived wounded, but stayed because they wanted to heal with the others. And so, on an ordinary morning, while they were setting up a new room for the next group of children, Maya paused for a second to look around her. The books, the voices, the drawings on the walls, the laughter coming from the playground. She thought of her mother, her father, the little girl she had been. And she understood, without needing words, that she had found what she had always sought. A place to belong, a purpose that gave meaning to her days, and a certainty that wouldn't be shattered by time. That certainty that only those who choose to stay have, even when everything seems difficult.